So welcome back, and we're going to start the next half. So we have a slight change in the whole program. Ashraf from Amgen could not make it, so we're going to be starting with the panel discussion right away on the platform here. It's going to be moderated by Bob. So let me have the pleasure of introducing the esteemed panelists here. Let me start with the extreme left, Thomas. Thomas has been one of the key drivers for setting this up, and he was the guy who kind of drove that this is the kind of platform we should set up for the future here. So thanks, Thomas, and we welcome you on the platform. Thomas is the head of primary care from Novartis. We've got Mohammed Hassan from Lilly. He is the marketing director. Thanks, Mohammed, making it on a short notice. Thank you so much. We've got Ashraf as a third panelist. Ashraf is the head of established care, so he's the regional marketing director for Pfizer established care in the business unit as the AFME region. Then we've got Farooq. Farooq is the head of key account management and from Novartis again, and we've got Werner. Werner was also in our India chapter, the first India chapter, Pharma Future, the panelist, and we welcome him back here. And then we have Bob. So we're going to have, I'm sure it will be interactive. We've slated around 45 minutes to an hour for this. So we've got Bob who's going to kind of moderate, and we'll take questions in between. So we're going to keep it as interactive as possible. Thank you so much. Bob, over to you.
Thank you. Maybe we could start out with Werner, and just we'll go down the line and everybody just introduce themselves briefly and give a little bit about your experience.
Okay, my name is Werner Rooseboom. I'm currently in a new role in the program. As said, I was the business unit head for cardiovascular at the Gulf for MSD. 4 weeks ago, my role changed. I'm now head up market access and pricing in the Gulf. As a bit of a background for myself, my experience in the Middle East, I've been here for just about 5 years. Initially with Novartis and Walid's team, and before that, South Africa marketing basically being in the background throughout. So from very regulated markets to unregulated markets, and that's basically it.
Sure. So I'm the head of key account management for Novartis in the Middle East cluster. Prior to this role, which is from the start of this year, I was leading primary care marketing for the Middle East. I've been with Novartis 2 years here in Dubai, and prior to this I was based in Canada, where I was working for about 10 years. So it gives me a very good perspective to see a very regulated, structured market facing anemic growth prospects to an unregulated market, but with much higher growth prospects over here. So I look forward to discussing that and sharing that with everyone.
Okay, good afternoon. I'm Ashraf Sadiq. I'm Senior Regional Marketing Director for Pfizer. I'm responsible for the established products in Africa and Middle East region. I've been in the industry since the last 25 years, since I graduated in 1986. I'm a pharmacist by profession, and I have different experiences actually, starting from the OTC and the hormone business, starting with Schering AG in Egypt a long time ago. Moved to Warner Lambert, introducing the Gen5 Brazil and entering the era of cholesterol. Then joined Pfizer after the acquisition in the year 2000. A lot of challenges, a lot of experiences, and a lot of people. And this is our industry, which is nowadays facing the most difficult challenge, at least from our perspective, to this minute. However, with this diversity of experience and best practice, I wish that we can come out of this vicious circle quickly with some practical solutions, because theoretical solutions will not serve us long. Practical solutions only can work and only can benefit our communities and our corporations as well. Thank you.
Hello everybody, my name is Mohammed Al-Kamshoushi. I'm Marketing Director for Eli Lilly in Near East and Gulf. Actually, I've been with Lilly for quite a long time. It's around 13 years. I had different roles in sales and marketing. I started with the brand management for the Gulf, and then new products planning for Middle East. And then I was part of the global brand team responsible for a big region, which is the Middle East, Turkey, Russia, and Asia as well, which gave me the opportunity to look at different markets with different dynamics. Then I got Six Sigma Black Belt. I'm certified Six Sigma Black Belt as well. Then I started to move to marketing management. I was a marketing director for Saudi, and then recently I moved to be marketing director for the area here. I think we're facing lots of challenges in the markets, but we're still building our affiliate capabilities and competencies, being lean in order to adapt all of this transformation happening in the market and be able to, with using our competencies and talents, I think we can move forward with our business and maintain our growth. Thanks.
I'm Thomas Wegman. I'm head of primary care for Novartis. I'm in the region since 2 years now. I'm heading the primary care business, which is including diabetes, hypertension, respiratory, and our established medicines, which is basically Voltaren and Cataflon. I've been in various roles before, majorly in marketing sales positions, heading the business units for primary care and specialties for Wyeth, which the company I've been with for 10 years almost, now Pfizer. Actually, I've been in Europe. I've been working in Asia, being based in Seoul for 2 years, and now driving the business in a very dynamic environment. It's quite interesting to see that, especially in the Middle East, we are seeing some transformation, and that requires, I think everybody agrees, quite a lot of flexibility and creativity to manage those dynamics, especially in these markets.
Great, thank you. The format we'll use, I prepared a few questions along the way as we listen to the speakers today. And then we'll take questions from the audience also. So if after a question there's any follow-up that people want to ask more clarification or whatever, or even a different issue, please just raise your hand. But maybe I'll start out with, Waleed brought up the importance and the growing importance of the patient here in the Middle East. And maybe I'll start with you, Thomas. From a company perspective, what kind of new investments have you made in the patient part of the healthcare equation to help produce better outcomes, whether it's technology-wise or otherwise, to help better the treatment of patients?
Thank you very much for this question, because it refers to Waleed's statement before in terms of patient centricity. Well, we all know, if we look at the patients in the Middle East, that we are moving on into the future in terms of internet patients. Patients get more informed. We all know that there's almost with no major therapy that the patients wouldn't have a second opinion in the Middle East. You always consult 2 doctors instead of buying your diagnosis and therapy at the first time. So we need to be aware of the level of education on the one hand of the patient and the level of information that he's getting with a very fast access. Where basically, if a patient gets a diagnosis, he would step out of the doctor's office and would have the information right on his hand and would Google whatever he got told. So I think that's something that we need to take into account. How do we manage the situation of fast information, of informed patients, that decision making of therapy and diagnosis is not only in the hands of the doctors, it's in the patient's hands more and more. For me, for example, MS patients decide very much about their own treatment. They say, well, look, I don't want this treatment because I don't want to inject myself. Please find something else or I don't take it. I think this is a discussion that we need to take into account and strengthen our relationship with patients and doctors, how we manage this kind of situation. I think that's number one. Number two is, I think if we want to build win-win situations, I think we need to take more and more into account that what is the benefit of the doctor, what is the benefit of the pharmaceutical industry, and what is the benefit of the payer. And it all centers around the patient. So whenever we come up with models that would benefit the patient, I think this is something where everybody would win. Patients would win, the doctors would win because they offer better treatments, the payers would win because they would get better deals, and in the end, of course, we would benefit as well in terms of treating more patients with the right products. I think that's the second thing that we need to take into account in the future, and that's going to move on more and more and more, and that's going to pay into this thesis that in the future it's not about the pill anymore, it's about the services that we offer around it. If the pharmaceutical industry is not able to differentiate in terms of superior services, I think you just offer a pill, but you don't get the reward in terms of value.
Good, good. Any comments or follow-up questions from the audience? Yes.
Thanks for the comment. I think the one point I want to make is usually patients have a Googleitis before they even go to the doctor. From my experience, is that you just put in skin rash, fever, lump in the neck, and you get 15 causes, of which one of will be Kawasaki's disease, for example. And patients will actually come to you and says, doctor, I've got Kawasaki's disease. But I think that's the physician's role now to differentiate and to guide and to assist. So I think your point is so valid. But just the point I was going to make is that usually they even come with a diagnosis or a differential diagnosis to you. So again, the shift is much, we know patient care is going to be critical, but it's also the kind of discussion that you're going to have with your patients. It's going to be quite crucial. And the word diagnosis is very, very important. If a physician does not give a diagnosis, the patient is not confident about just the service that he or she has just received. And that's where I think the second opinions come into play. So I think as much as, I always tell people, when you go to a doctor, you have an illness. When you leave the room, you have a disease. And I think that's the kind of communication and skills that we're referring to, and kind of enhancing and growing the doctor-patient relationship and the confidence to give the correct diagnosis for patient-centric care.
As a comment on what you have said, I believe, as you said, that patients' voice are very sporadic in our region. And it is episodic, as Walid have mentioned, after the Arab Spring and people that are going to increase the healthcare expenditure. What we need to think as a pharma companies, I think, is there is any collaborative approach to increase the strength of patients groups or organized patient groups to influence government decisions in our region or not.
Does anybody want to comment on the panel on that?
But from my side, I think the key would be how to form alliances with the patient organizations, pharmaceutical industry, and the payers at the same time. I think that's the added value that could be coming up in the future. Not only seeing the patient from a very individual, single perspective, but how to form alliances. I think that's the key in the future. That's why I agree with your comment.
As a panel here, this is something applicable that pharma companies can help patient groups in certain disease areas, for example, chronic disease areas, high specialty disease areas. Is there something applicable to have a collaborative approach or not?
Go ahead.
If we succeed first to help dash influence, dash impact the regulations of the pharmaceutical industry in the region, then we can move to the next step, which is to upgrade the communication with the patient. Our problem as a pharmaceutical industry in the region that we were talking about, that we have different regulations in different markets. Even in the same market, you have different MOH body in this emirate is different than the other. So we need first to build this kind of partnership with the regulatory body in the region. Then we can move to the patient. So it's very important, but it's obvious that we should start from the top to the base of the pyramid. We cannot jump to the base without affecting or building trust with this top of the pyramid.
Sure, go ahead, Mohammed.
I think it's a very relevant question, because if you look at the Western or well-developed countries, these patient groups, they influence decisions. Here in our area, we are not that much mature or developed to that level. If we look at our role in this one, it will be, I'm not seeing it a strong one, rather than associations. Today, if you look at association, you see it's like specialty associations, diabetes associations, and so across the region, it's not that even mature. Yes, there are some associations, but still they cannot influence the major decisions. So I think we can start first, let's find associations at the physician level. Then patient association, it's always very sensitive, especially here you're talking to patients, which is touching a privacy part. So it should be present, and you can support them according to the requests, but to get involved and start to encourage it, I think it will come with time and with the evolution and with the transformation in the future. And its role will increase. But today, it's not still
I have just a question regarding this, because it's to you. You know, what I can hear and we can see it. For me, it's too early to start having patient group that can influence, because frankly, in this market, nothing is allowed and everything is allowed. By law, nothing is allowed, because you know, if you want to respect the regulation, we cannot even convey the message, and in practice, everything is allowed. For us being regulated, we cannot follow except nothing is allowed until the regulation will change. My challenge, and for you as a commercial leaders, how today, and then coming to the Google, because what scares me the most is, first, we don't have the right medical media. So today you can see even in the newspapers, they take a piece of information from press, and then with the translation, it's totally different information that could be misleading to the patient. So for you, what is the solution in order to educate the patient? Because if the patient now has access to Google, he might get confused with many things. And then sometimes it makes the life of the physician terrible, because if he get a prescription, he will go and Google and see a lot of adverse events, which is normal. He will be scared, and that this will impact compliance and whatever. So as a commercial, knowing the regulation, what is the best solution in order to work with patient support group, other medical umbrella, to make sure that the patients are really taking the right education?
I think that's a very valid point, but we have two channels of communication to the patients. First of all, direct via the patient associations, so we can do medical information, of course, about our products on the one hand, and on the other hand, via the doctors. So the more patient education material we offer to the doctors, the better the education will be for the patients. I think that's the key in terms of getting the right information to the patients. Otherwise, as you said, they Google and they find the list of 50 or even more pages where they can go through, and will get even in the in the blogs they will get different patient recommendations, and that's something I think we need to handle in terms of flow of information via the doctors on the one hand, and on the other hand via the associations.
I have two quick points regarding this topic, which is very relevant. One is that the one more additional avenue I would add in response to Waleed's question is working with the regulatory authorities, working with the Ministry of Health, working with the various hospital groups and other, because they are just as concerned about the epidemic of diabetes, they're concerned with the epidemic of hypertension and other diseases. So partnering with them, offering expertise to them, because they have many desires but not many capabilities. So we can help the government and the large institutions develop their capabilities and reach to the patients. That's one thing. The other thing, going back to your question about patients, I would add that, maybe reaching out to patient association or whatever, as some have said, that can wait. But I think what cannot wait is that we need to at least start thinking about the patient and understanding the patient and the patient journey. Too many of us have been focused on a target audience of one, which is the physician and the doctor. And all we care about is how the doctor will prescribe, how to change prescribing habit and so on. If we step back and look at the patient journey from diagnosis and all the way through, and focus on where we can help the patient, whether we are directly touching the patient or not, having this understanding will help us develop programs, develop services which benefit the patient, which benefit the hospitals, and ultimately also help us in doing the business that we're doing.
Certainly.
Okay. From my perspective, I think that I like to use the iPhone as a metaphor for where we are. If all of us think of 5 years ago, how many of these were around? How many of us owned one? How many of us own one today? It's complete, and the world has changed with these. And pharma, by definition, we are very rule-bound. We have ethical standards through which we must operate and so on. But the patient doesn't care about that. The patient's got this. They go out and they will find the information. The challenge we have is how do we deliver what the patient needs in the format that they need, when they need it, while still sticking in these rules. It's really challenging because pharma, we tend to live our lives looking in the rearview mirror. We always say, okay, we always did things this way in the past, so we'll keep on doing these things that way. We should actually be looking through the windscreen and say, where are we going? What does the future hold? And so it really does. I think, Farouk, your comment around working on with the regulatory bodies is critical, and it needs to be done yesterday, because the patient cannot wait, and the patient will not wait, and we have to adapt to the patient's needs.
Good. Just a kind of a final comment before we move on this. I think Farouk made an important point, and that is that this is really a patient journey for many of these chronic diseases. And I guess one of the mistakes that we learned from in the US early on is you can spend hundreds of millions of dollars in direct-to-consumer television advertising and whatever to drive the patient into the physician to ask for your product, and then count on the physician being able to coach that patient through the first 2 months of therapy and through compliance and whatever. And in a lot of cases, it just never happens. So we kind of forgot about the patient part of the journey that occurs after they get the first prescription. And I think we've gotten a little smarter with that over the years. So most of your companies in the US have, product-specific websites that hopefully physicians who prescribe the medicine help direct the patient to, so that they know what the follow-up is, they know how to ask questions, they know what types of things they have to modify in their lifestyle to be compliant and get the best outcome from that medication. But it's only been in the last few years that they have been developed. And I had the opportunity to work with a mid-sized company in the US in the launch of a new hepatitis C therapeutic. And they actually built the patient website ahead of, the actual launch of the drug, and got clinicians engaged in getting patients to the website prior to even the launch of the drug. And it's been, a marvelous improvement in compliance overall, at least from their perspective. So anyways, with that, I want to shift the discussion a little bit towards the changing economics of payers in the Middle East. And since Werner, you just recently assumed this new role with MSD, as I think Walid made the comment that the middle class is growing very rapidly here in Middle East, and it's been, kind of a private pay market with government playing some role. How do you see the dynamics changing in the next 5 years, and how are you at MSD and your team preparing for this? What kind of actions are you taking?
You don't pull your punches, eh?
No.
First 1 month in the job and I get a tough question. Okay. No, I think it's we're definitely going to see private insurance taking over. This is already happening. We all see it. The second part is PBM. We all hear it. It's coming. The third part is DRGs. DRGs will come very soon, and that will really change our landscape completely. If we're going by diagnosis, X amount will be paid, say, for an uncomplicated femur fracture to go to the hospital, and that's the amount that will be paid. Whether the patient stays in the hospital for 5 days or 2 days is irrelevant. The service provider will be paid X amount. So I see significant change coming in that respect. And I also see the government's pushing more and more of the responsibility of co-pays and carrying some of the burden to the patient. This is predictable. I think we all see it. So generics will certainly play a bigger role. And the choice of the physician, the role or the power of the physician in the choice will become less. So definitely in our setup, yes, we have very promotion-sensitive markets with field force and so on, but the change will come quickly. I think in the next 5 years we will see a completely different model in this region. Something that might have taken the US 15 years to do will happen here in 5.
Okay, so as a follow-up to that, and I'll just open it up to the panel, if you're dealing now with, being reimbursed for outcomes, how are your companies going about preparing for helping the payers, whether it's government or private insurance, understand what those outcomes are and monitor the outcomes from, beginning of therapy throughout this whole patient journey? Anybody?
Okay. For me, I'm seeing it. It's a challenge. It won't be an easy one because lacking of local enough data. You cannot start to judge it or set a clear metrics unless I have full information about the market. If insurance companies would start to ask about this one, outcomes and so, okay, we have a list of data that must be known before going at that approach. But I hope in the near future we would have this data that would make our life easier in order to find the clear outcomes. And most of the data, I think all of us were using, it's like US, European data, things just trying to get the closest market to us and look what they did, but so far we don't have this one.
I believe also with the early trials and early models of reimbursement systems arise in the region. I agree with Muhammad that we don't have yet clear model that we can build on. However, the answer might be to be a little bit proactive in preparing those bodies and to transfer the best experience out of the developed markets where we have real models that prove that it works. So it needs some initiative from the multinational pharmaceutical company because I don't believe that the generic companies are able to do it or are hungry to do it. So we should be the one who start to do that. We have the experience from the other part of the world, and we just need a clear decision, because here no single company will benefit out of this. I believe the biggest multinational companies will be the main contributor and should be the main beneficiaries out as a result.
Right. I think that, from my perspective, that's very insightful. And two things that come to mind with me is, one, when I was early in my marketing experience at Merck, we looked at Norway to do some clinical development. And the reason we went to Norway is because they've got a national health system where everybody is captured in one single database, and you could actually, look at different populations to kind of predict outcomes. And it was the only other model in the world other than the Framingham study from Framingham, Massachusetts, that actually had that kind of a system. The major, I think, shortcoming of the private insurers in the U.S. is that there's no portability of data between insurance plans. And yet patients are changing insurance plans as frequently as they change jobs. So our kind of middle-aged strata of Americans is probably changing jobs every 3 to 4 years now. And when they're working for Novartis, they may be in the Aetna healthcare system. And when they switch over to J&J, they may be in United Healthcare. And their medical record is not portable between those two companies. So it starts all over again with a new insurer. And so you can't get these outcomes data from long-term chronic therapies. So as the private insurance system develops in the Middle East, I think it would behoove you to take a leadership position, as Ashraf said, from an industry to try and guide how this can benefit long-term outcomes and the way to look at it on a patient, from a patient standpoint. Any other follow-up questions? Yes.
I think.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I have a question in regards to also preparing the healthcare provider themselves to provide those data for outcome. Or is the setup currently in the region providing this? Do they have enough facilities and resources? If we see what happened in Abu Dhabi when the insurance company, the mandating of the insurance, what happened to a lot of facilities that was offering services for the patient, that they had to invest a lot in prepare in a very short time to adjust to this market dynamic change. But looking at outcome, it even needs more resources and more infrastructure to be built there early on before taking such a decision to be working and evaluating on outcome.
Mohammed, just to add to what you've just said, we know that in some of our markets, like Abu Dhabi, there is some data available. And I'm saying some, and probably more there than in most other places. But what is available? Is it everything that you need, for instance, to do an HTA assessment? Probably not. We're exploring these avenues, I think we all are, but we are having a hard time really getting them to collect and make sure that the integrity of the data is good. As you know, with Thika, we had a real problem 2 years ago where they were supposed to do HbA1c assessments and everybody did it, but it wasn't actually done. And so the data, the integrity of the data is also questionable. So this is a authority or database that's in its infancy, and that really needs to mature pretty quickly for us to be able to do something with it.
Yeah. Yes.
Again, I'm Hussam from MSD, working as private insurance market access in MSD. My background came for 10 years from private insurance industry, so I can claim that I can talk, currently in the pharma, so I can talk from both sides. I was amazed when I worked with pharma also that the two industries doesn't talk to each other. This is very, very strange thing. Do you know that 30% of the private insurance costs are paid for drugs? So 30% of their medical budgets for pharma. Again, now currently payers or private insurance payers is around 80% in Saudi Arabia. The payers, the major payers. In Abu Dhabi, it's 95% or 99%. In Dubai, it's 80%. It's even more. There is a lot of things that both industries have to talk about it. And as a pharma industry, we have to understand the private insurance industry much better than we do now. So many pharma companies now, they respond to any challenge, specific challenge, by sending a medical rep to the private insurance industry to talk about the product or something else. We have to understand each other. We should share partnership programs. Even we can incorporate the clients as the patients, because it's our mutual clients as a patient to benefit him in disease management programs. We have to make sure that we work for the same goal, and it's not always that if I make benefits, the insurance industry will lose more, or vice versa. We should share together, and we try to understand the private insurance industry in more detail, so we can work together in this 80% in Dubai, 95% or 95%. I never seen these numbers except in the States. Even in the States, it's less than that. But we are a very specific model. I never seen it globally, that the private insurance is handling 80% of the funding for the healthcare.
But why do you think that there is no interaction between pharmaceutical industry and insurances?
Historically, private insurance industries looked at the pharma industries that somebody who's going to sell more. If he's coming knocking on my door, he's going to sell me a new product or a new guidelines that will make him benefit more.
I think that's the key issue in the future. Maybe in the future we will find mutual objectives, pharmaceutical industry and insurances. But what happened in the past was basically that the insurances always wanted to try to negotiate down the price.
Not always.
So maybe that's the reason why we need to find mutual objectives in the future.
That's what I'm saying, that we don't understand each other. As a pharma, we don't understand private insurance industry. There is a lot of private insurance industries that not only care about pricing, they are working for the healthcare. Major multinational insurance companies, they care about the health of the patients, about benefits, about the outcome. So this is
I think that's the key, that I would agree on this part in terms of finding mutual projects serving the patient that would serve for the insurances on the one hand, so that they would offer additional services to their patients and attract of course people for their insurances, and on the other hand we could sell our services as well.
So I think the most important message I want to convey, that as a pharma industry we need to understand the payers more, so we can help each other in this aspect.
Actually, I just want to make a comment. I think that's very important, the point you raised. And I just picked up on one statistic where you said that 30% of the insurance companies' costs are coming from drugs. So 70% are coming from elsewhere. And I think if we can emphasize the point that, drugs are a part of the cost, but also a big part of the solution in terms of lowering other costs, because upfront, cheap drugs or substandard drugs might seem like a great option, but in terms of what impact does it have on longer hospital stays, on repeat patients, on recurrences, I think if we can emphasize this point and have a forum with them, I think it will benefit them and it will benefit us. So very good point. Thank you.
I think, I agree, the point today to find the common goal is patients. I mean, for them, they want to provide the patient with the right service at the best cost. And for us, we want to, give the right treatment to the right patient. So I think that's the point. But coming to all of this discussion, I have two questions to you, because it looks like, from what I hear, that the direction that will have more PBM, will have more regulated and private. So, and this might require to have some data, because today we don't know. I mean, that's the uncertainty we are talking about. But let's assume if today this will happen in 5 years down the road, and now my headquarter is developing a product that will be available in 5 years, and then after 5 years, I will come and they say, you know what, good job, my friend, but you need to have health, economic, and outcome research. So as commercial leader, I mean, I have a question to you. What needs to be done today to be successful in the future? Because in 5 years, we cannot close the shop and go home. Because if you don't prepare, we have a problem. So I think I have two questions. What capabilities we need to build based on all of this? And a question to you, what do you think the pharma organization, if you look to your organization, how it looks like in the future? We'll have like 100 rep and I don't know, 10, 15 marketeers or 2 medical, or it looks totally different?
Anybody want to take that?
This is very complicated question. However, number one, let's agree that we as big pharmaceutical companies have a responsibility. Responsibility first to serve as a patient, and responsibility to prepare the company for the next era, which you are talking about. Preparing the company for the next era should started with clear vision, at least for this part of the world, to our higher management, that the region had changed. And this is the scenario as we see it. And, sorry, and to propose the correspondent plan of action that matches with this strategy to, after 5 years, to be ready to play it right for the right patient and for the right medicine. The next part of the next part of the question related to how you look to the commercial model or to the field force structure, etc. I believe that we might not reach to let all the field force go, but we may need to restructure our muscles. I mean, we need more key account management rather than medical reps. We need more health specialists. We need more health insurance representatives. We need more collaboration with the regulatory bodies, with the institutions. We need to build trust, simply. We need to build trust with all the authorities. And building trust will not come with words, it will come with actions. It will come with plans. And when I talk about plans, I'm not talking about a short-term plan. Let's talk about 5 years plan, if your question is related to 5 years. So this is our 5 years correspondent plan. This is our strategy. We will support that, we will sponsor that, and we will educate your patients through your organization, through your hospitals, etc. We will educate your doctors, we will educate your nurses. We will help reform of the health industry in this region. So it's not one action, it's a set of actions under one vision. If we believe in that, if we see the same destination, so let's go together. I believe also that it's not Pfizer or Abbott or GSK. It should be some partnership with all this toward one destination as we all see it. It doesn't mean that we will sacrifice something or cannibalize on something, but we see the same destination, we agree on the same objective, so let's do it together. And the benefit will be for all.
I'll just get back to the point of the private insurance. Obviously, it's emerging, especially here in UAE, and probably we didn't answer this question yet. I mean, our friend from MSD has mentioned our relationship with the private insurance. But I mean, we have to agree, we have to face it. I mean, private insurance, they have their main objective to reduce their costs, and probably they can make their medical franchise more profitable. So the question to the panel is probably, I mean, what's the role of a pharmaceutical company, again, going as collaborative work to the employer or to the patient or probably to the policymakers? I mean, at the end, with the PBM and UAE, probably, I mean, we'll look at them, they will try to sell themselves, and they're trying to reduce the cost for private insurance. So we have to talk to someone here in UAE or any other country. So what is really the role to talk to the employer, and again, in a way, to the patient, and again, to the policymaker or to the government? That's my first question. And the second one, related probably to whatever Walid has mentioned and raised it as a question. Regarding the value-based pricing, it's value-based pricing probably we don't see it right now, but in a way, when we have tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3, and probably that will implicate some price rebate or rebate with the BPM, I consider it as an approach to value-based pricing. So I would like just to hear from the panel, what do you think about this as well?
Can I answer the first part in terms of private insurances? I think the key point is that we would identify common objectives with the insurers. So to see that we offer additional services to their patients that they both would benefit. On the one hand, we would offer just not only the pill, but additional services if it comes to diabetes, additional diagnosis tools or whatever, that they could sell to their patients as a superior service, so the patients get an additional benefit from their insurances. I think that's the key area that we should focus on. On the other hand, of course, negotiation will always be the part of talking about the product price with the insurances, of course. But there again, we should find some models that would allow us to offer superior access to the patients in the insurances. I think that's the key, and not only relate our negotiations to price. Otherwise, it's going to be the same way like it's been in the past. They will focus on price, we will focus on value. In terms of Walid's question, I think if we talk about, again, about market access and about health economics, I think the key that we have, the issue that we have at this point, is we don't really know the parameters that will be set by the authorities. For other markets like in the UK, it's very clear, it's nice, they have guidelines, they have regulations, and you know it's going to be for the next 5 years, it's going to be more or less that way. Germany is the same with the IQWIC, they're sure that you exactly know what they expect in terms of when you submit your file. With us, we don't know. Do we need to relate to the US regulations? Do we need to relate to the IQWIC or the NICE regulations in the future? I think that's our task as well as an industry, to find out what is requested in the future to submit a file that will allow us the right access to the patients.
Can I just, I have one comment. I guess it's a multidisciplinary approach because, and at the same time, you have to look at your stakeholders, understand them very well. Because when you talk to insurance people, is the price of medicine is an issue? We heard here it's 30%. Where is the 70%? I can tell you, I had several discussions with people in insurance. Do you know what is the most painful thing for them? It's patient to be hospitalized. So if I understand this from insurance people, and I start to think, okay, my medicine will minimize hospitalization, I think it might save them a lot, rather than the cost of the pill is X or Y or Z. So I guess we need to have more understanding what does it mean for them. Even if you talk about the pricing, so health outcome data, okay, what are their expectations in order to meet it? I can get you health outcome models from all over the world, from Japan, from US, from Europe, from so. But if I don't know how much is the cost of hospitalization, all this equation won't work. So I think it's understanding our stakeholders, how they are thinking, and their insights. And from there, I can look at my global team, what they have, different markets, and start to match both together. So this is my...
Just one... Oh, sure.
I have a comment here because of cost effectiveness, and I just mentioned that some people here are only focusing on the NICE and the quali concepts. And I believe that we need to educate our decision makers, or specifically purchasers, about how they measure the cost effectiveness and the quali concepts and how they do this, because there is a dramatic cost variation between what is happening in the UK and what we have here as a cost. So they don't understand this. Second thing, NICE itself, they started to do tours in our region. I can recall in Oman, in Jordan, if I'm not mistaken, they have done tours for education from the nice people themselves. So I believe that pharma companies should take a stand on this. Third thing that we face different things that in the Ministry of Health, for example, some people are responsible for purchasing of medications, and some people are responsible for hospital expenditure, and some people are responsible for building hospitals. So when you are negotiating with the people responsible for the cost of medication, they told you, you are trying to discuss the life cycle cost of the whole system, and they told you at the end, I don't care, because this is another body budget. What I really care about is to reduce the medicine cost. So pharma companies should take this to a higher level. For example, Minister of Health is, and this need to be something again collaborative, because they don't understand this as the people who purchase only medications, and they don't understand what is the impact of the cost on other people.
If I could, I think those are very, very valid points and good points, and I would just say that to what the panelists have added, the topic is change and the system changing, but I think there's an opportunity in it for all of us, because in countries where a system is established and set in stone, there's sometimes very limited room to influence it. And here we should see this, that in our region, and mainly we're focusing on UAE, but I mean systems are very different in Saudi and very different in Egypt and very different in Lebanon and so on. But they are all evolving and changing. And I fully agree with you that as the pharma body and as the CEOs who are part of the pharma, they should get together, agree among themselves, and try to educate on quality. I think most people would not even know in the government what quality is. Try to educate them, try to bring them to a level, because they need this. What I find is that there are lots of objectives and 5-year goals, and we're going to bring this and we're going to do that. But the capability to deliver that and implement that is not there. So it happens very haphazardly. So if we can get together, and in the interest of the patients, in the interest of our industry, in the interest of healthcare institutions, we can work with them to bring these capabilities to them. I think we can try to help shape the environment rather than just be a victim of the environment. So I think that's what needs to be done from now to impact 5 years from now.
Yeah. Mac?
Yes, one of the challenges that we have, I believe, as a pharmaceutical industry is that, as I question for the rules of the trust of the trust, because there is clearly a loss of trust at the payers level and to the pharmaceutical industry. And the symptoms of this is clearly the compliance codes, the rise of programs like BBM and new stakeholders like insurance and payers and so on. And I think this have done, unfortunately, not in a good faith. Over the 15 years, the pharmaceutical industry very commercially driven. So optimizing sales and dealing with the industry as a blunt P&L format. However, adding value that the Novartis CEO giving the right patient, finding the right patients, the right time, giving the right medications is not yet translated in our practices, or maybe it was, but lost over 15 years of practice. And payers don't see this. Payers sees that these companies want to make money, and who have witnessed 2 years ago when the had taken a decision that prescribers only prescribe the generic names. You can see pharmacists and payers very happy that they say, okay, now we will decide who's going to make money. It's not physicians anymore. So I think the gap lies in communication. We have values in our industry, but either we don't live them or we have a gap in transforming them to the new stakeholders. This is one of the key issues. I think that it's very important to handle with the new
Great point. The private insurance industry, healthcare insurance industry in the U.S. has evolved over the past 30 years or so. So when I first joined Merck, Merck just reimbursed all of our medical costs. In the US, it was almost like a birthright, a given right, that if you worked for a big company, they would pay all your health care insurance, as part of the perk. And as healthcare insurers began to grow, there was one or two, but when they became much more competitive, they really found that the future of their business was understanding the patient and the dynamics of that patient in any part of a disease state, so that they could think about how they could capitate the cost of that over a period of so many years, and then price their medical insurance back to General Motors or some big company in a way that was competitive with their competitors. So as the point I'm trying to make in a convoluted way is really, as your private insurance industry tends to develop here, data is going to be very, very important for their future livelihood. So if you can partner with them early on and help them understand what are the right data points. When they see a newly diagnosed diabetic, what panel of tests should they be telling the clinician that they need to order? What type of follow-up should there be with that patient? And how do they maintain that on a database that's easily searchable, so that 5 years from now, when you come in with a new diabetes drug, you can look at current therapy and where the shortcomings are over a longitudinal sample of patients and predict the outcomes that you can benefit that patient population for, whether it's for the insurer, whether it's for the government, whether it's for private industry. So just some comment. The value add comment I thought was very good. We've never really figured out that part of the equation in the US. We consistently talk about value add, but it's our sense of value add from the manufacturer's side, not what our customers truly believe value add is. So we've never really convinced them that this thing that we call value add is worth 20% on the price point. And what we tend to do is we always cave in at the end and give them a reduced price to keep the business. So just something to keep in mind. I want to change a little bit of the focus and talk about the pharmacist, because in Western markets, especially U.S., pharmacist has become increasingly important in the healthcare decision. And I would suspect that, well, I don't know much about this market, but I would ask, maybe Mohammed, you could comment on the importance of the pharmacist here and what you see that being maybe 5 years from now.
Yeah, actually, pharmacists, it's one of the stakeholders we're working with, for sure, and will stay in the system. I think pharmacist knowledge is one of the very important things. If you look at and link it to access and health outcomes and all of this, you find pharmacists that are playing different roles. It depends on the hospital, on the institution, or is in retail sector, but they are still the key people for that driving the brand information or the product information or the molecule. They own this part, and they always part of the committees and decision making. So it's very important at the institution, at the access level. Pricing as well, it's related very much. Pharmacists are involved in this one. If you look at the retail part, I think in most of the markets they are dispensers, okay, rather than they are not a lawful prescribers. But of course, brand familiarity and patients, supporting patients, questioning, awareness, and this part, they play a big role in it, and they must be familiar with all products.
Good. Any other comments from the panel or from the audience on pharmacists?
No? I want to add to what Mohammed said. I think from my perception, being in the market, going to institutions, going to private pharmacies, I see exactly what you say. You see different roles. In the private sector, though, I get a strong sense that the pharmacist truly is only a dispenser. The amount of information that is going between the pharmacist and the patient at the point of dispensing is so small, actually negligible. And I think there's really an opportunity there in terms of how the doctor also doesn't have the time to teach the patient how to take the medication, what to avoid, what to do, what not to do. So somewhere in there, there's an opportunity. How do we fill that gap? It's challenging because we have our own rules about interaction with patients and so on, but surely we can find a way to facilitate that and help them.
Question, because also we can see, I think the point, we should not think for tomorrow what's happening today, because tomorrow is different. And what I can see, even there is another industry emerging in our region, which is the chain pharmacies. And those guys, they are coming now and start to do what we do, which is a product plus. This means, adding value, doing some awareness program, educational program, and we start to see it here. So, I mean, that's, if tomorrow this was the direction, because, I mean, take UAE as an example. I mean, with the stopping FOC to the pharmacy, I assume that, small pharmacies will disappear, and then we will end up by having maybe 5 or 6 main chains. And those guys also, they have now a marketing department. They want to compete between each other because, their margin is known. So how can they attract more customer to their pharmacies by adding value to the patient? So how we can, I mean, manage in such a situation?
That's an important point. Just, for example, chain pharmacy in the U.S. now is responsible for about, I think last I saw, 70% of all the influenza vaccine delivery each year. So that used to be 100% primary care. You'd go in once a year and get your flu shot. Now Walgreens and CVS and all the chains are doing it as a kind of loss leader to get the patient in. They charge them a minimal cost to get their flu vaccine, but then they buy all their shampoo and everything while they're in the pharmacy. So I think you're going to see a lot of dynamics probably change here in the marketplace. Farouk, maybe you could comment on key account management and how that's kind of evolved in Middle East and what you see the future for really focusing on key accounts in a big way.
Sure. So I think we are looking at a multi-stakeholder environment, and that's where key account management plays a very important role. Even to Waleed's last question about pharmacies and chain pharmacies, I mean, they are just one more stakeholder. We have to broaden our horizon from the physician to include other stakeholders. I mean, the physician, of course, is still very important and crucial, but we have been exclusively focused on the doctor. And now there's going to be chain pharmacies, there's going to be clinical pharmacists and institutions, there's going to be other stakeholders, private insurance, and so on. So we have to address them, and we have to try, from a key account management perspective from Novartis, our approach is all about partnership. So for us, we have been talking about new models, new needs. So what we want to do in the future is to move away from just, a lot of in our region, a lot of key account management is just taken to mean institutional medical rep, following up on consumption or enlisting. And I think it's the way we see it, it is much more beyond that. Without going into specifics, I think the key is for us to recognize that there are many stakeholders, that we need to partner with them. And that is the approach, certainly within Novartis, that we, of course, keep the physician and the patient, first of all, the patient as the center of our focus, and then see who else is playing a role in giving the right medication to the right patient at the right time. If we take this approach and we map the journey of the patient, then we have to take a more holistic approach. And key account management for us is about this holistic approach, is about addressing the various stakeholders at the various points in the patient's journey. So that's what I would say, and I would also say that this is something that is relatively new to our region and perhaps to our industry. And I think in a lot of the future that we're talking about, this is the direction that companies will need to think about. And going back to Waleed's question, what do we see the structure? It cannot just be hiring 100, 200 medical reps and throwing them at a new product and hoping that this will lead to sale. It has to be very strategic depending on what is the patient's needs and build a team around that. And I think key account management plays a role there also.
Yes.
Just want to comment about the chain pharmacies because this is a rising issue in the region, and I believe it goes to the extent, to the extreme maybe in Saudi Arabia and in Nahdi, for example. What I want to say here that, again, we need a collaborative approach between pharma companies to overcome something like this because it will end up by shelf space renting. And if we do not act collaboratively and each company act individually, we will end up facing this pressure. This is one thing. The second thing about the structure in the future, in maybe 5 years, I believe that we'll still continue in the hybrid model, as Walid have said. In acute disease area, maybe it will continue to be a share of voice. In chronic disease areas and highly specialized disease areas, I think there will be a major shift to internet and digital media, but still you will not be able to just remove the product specialist or key account managers. You have to keep a minimum, maybe larger areas, but you cannot just stop doing the personal selling.
And I guess the final issue I want to touch is this whole issue of value add. And maybe Ashraf, you could comment or give us your thoughts on, as these stakeholders are changing away from just physicians, you know, what do you think are some of the value added features that are really going to be embraced upon by the patient, the pharmacist, the insurer, these other things? And what are you guys doing to take leadership in that role?
Thank you. Another very big question. I believe there is no one word solution here, Bob. I see in your presentation and in Walid's presentation as well, what we call it a holistic approach. Here we need to have this kind of vision. Here we need to have this kind of understanding to the market, understanding the key players, the key needs, because if you go to somebody, as our colleague said, you will be faced with many demands, depend on who is this, what is his role in the organization or in the insurance company or in the ministry. So being successful needs to have a clear vision from our side as a regional players, and to have this holistic approach which address the most important and critical needs to push this industry ahead. This industry is under severe pressure and will continue to be under severe pressure from up and from down, unless we create a parallel way to maximize and expand the markets, gaining the trust of the authorities and the health insurance and the patients and the pharmacists. So it's not a one step or a one easy solution. It needs some long-term plans with clear deliverables and with clear objectives.
Good, thank you.
Can I add to this?
Absolutely.
Good. I think, again, I think the first question we need to ask ourselves is the patient. Okay. And frankly speaking, I don't, Walid's question, the question was what is the value? What is the value add? I think in most cases we don't know. And you have to start with the patient, and it's not about saying, okay, I've made the product and now I'll go out and sell it. I mean, I'm reminded of, the car wars in the US, where a cup holder became an important thing in a car, and making a decision as to what car you're going to buy. Does it have a cup holder or not? And in some cases we really don't know. So it's important that we find a way to get closer to the patient, or to create a channel or of some sort through which we can gather that information and get closer to the patient. And then we will understand what it is that we need to deliver.
Good. Yes.
Okay, I think the only constant thing in our life and in the region in here is actually change. So change is like, it has been going on for the past 10, 15 years, as long as I remember in the industry in here. And we're trying to just put our bets in different approaches and forecast how the future is going to be. But I was really looking forward for one word in the meeting today, which was actually market research. I think that the easiest and the shortest way is to ask our consumers or patients, between brackets, what do they want? And at the same time, I think that we really need to study the patient path to purchase and how to maintain that even afterwards with the chronic diseases that are available, and check where can we really make an impact in that path to purchase. And I believe that market research is a really very easy and guiding solution. It can be done to the patients, or if there is restrictions through regulations and different global ethical codes and other things, then probably through doctors and pharmacists. And I don't know what is the role of our companies in doing some market research to understand what is going on. Like I really like the example that keeping patients in the hospital would really terrify the insurance companies. This was a really great example. So we know that there is something, but we just know it unstructurally. We need to have something that I think that is really structured so that we can know where to put our bets and where to go exactly, how to influence this market and keep it growing. I'd like your comments on that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, somebody like to comment?
Can I comment on this?
Sure.
Actually, market research, I won't call it market research. I would call market information and knowledge. Okay? Market research, yes, I would use market research to collect data or to know some information, which is very important. But if you want to make a market research at that level to understand a full market with lots of dynamics, I think you need to spend more than what you're going to sell, because it will be quite expensive. It's not a cheap one to come up with the quality that you're looking for to take a business decision. So today, look at market research. Most of us who are doing market researches, okay? What is the sample size? It's very small. Still, yet, we are depending on and making some decisions. But other information that we're lacking, it's beyond our capabilities and investment. It needs to come from governments, okay? How many patients hospitalized because of X, Y, Z across the country? And still, at the same time, if you look at the area here, how many markets that, yes, it makes sense to get this information. It's a big population. Egypt, in Saudi, but in Emirates, I won't go for market research with $2 million. Okay, so what we're depending on our assumptions, it's on the global percentages. And so IDF is announcing, in the areas this will be, or global associations. But in order to make a local, customized market research for yourself for a specific disease area, I think it might be very expensive and you have to balance it. Of course, it will be great if I got this expense to do it, but you have to balance it. It's worth or not.
But if we're talking about
especially with this time where we are pressured under budget constraints, under severe directions to go down the coast, I believe here is difficult. And that's why here one company cannot do it. Okay? So again, we can play a role with the ministries, we can play a role together, but no single company is able to do it. No way.
But wouldn't a dipstick in the market just give you a direction at least? I mean, it's better than having nothing, but a dipstick at least will give you a direction. But today we're just trying to put our bets like here, 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 and let's see how it will go.
But I think, well, I was going to say a couple of things. First of all, I think all companies are, I don't know about your organization, but I think all companies are, trying to understand the patient journey, market research, and so on. So that is done sporadically. The other thing I was going to propose actually is, We have heard, all of us have said we need to collaborate, we need to get together. I know there is, for example, a pharma organization at the level of CEOs which are getting together. But let me propose something very practical here. There are colleagues from many different companies here, many of commercial backgrounds, some market access, DRA. You know, I'm surprised, I've been 2 years in Dubai, I'm surprised that there isn't a pharmaceutical organization or association where we would meet once every 2 months over, you know, lunch or evening coffee and just discuss the issues, the challenges. I think it's wonderful that Indegene has provided this platform, and for the first time I'm hearing from many other colleagues and getting really interesting questions. You know, in outside, whether it's Toronto, Chicago, whatever, they'll have these meetings like on a monthly basis. And of course, you know, we need to, I will not share proprietary, nor do I expect from you, but there are many common things and common challenges, and it would benefit everyone. And it doesn't have to be just at the level of CEOs. Commercial leaders, others, colleagues can meet and get together. So I propose at the end of this meeting, let us just have a sheet of paper, put our names, and, you know, 2 months from now, get together. I think if Waleed is okay, we can have a meeting in the Novartis offices. So we don't need to the Atlantis necessarily. We can come and have a nice discussion and talk. And this way, we will build the platforms, we will build the networking and the knowledge, and maybe, you know, we can come up with some collaborations and some things. And it would also bring, to your point, our collective knowledge about the different markets and different challenges together in a room. So if you like this, you know, I propose that at the end of this meeting, we just share with each other.
I think, you know, Farouk, just to comment, there is a framework, but it is only for, you know, the pharma group, that I think they have only two working group, DRA and compliance. And, you know, the CEOs are meeting across, I mean, for the Middle East, and this makes a lot of sense, because when we meet as the CEOs, we focus mainly on big issues, and frankly, you know, for the last 5 years, we were talking about intellectual property and I think pricing. So it was more firefighting rather than, you know, looking for the future. So this makes a lot of sense, because at one point, you know, and frankly, I can even take it up to the pharma group, if we can have another working group that can work across the countries, you know, which is more commercial leaders, to give us and, you know, access, because that's what we'll face in the future. So give us some insights, because we can do something. I mean, in the environment where resources is an issue, guys, we were dealing as an industry, every company alone, and then we deal with each other, which was each other as enemies, not competitor. I mean, competition has nothing to do for being enemies, you know. I mean, we all do our jobs. There is certain areas we have to go to do together. I mean, tomorrow if we talk, I mean, if there is a certain disease or a big project, neither Novartis or GSK or Pfizer can do it alone. But maybe in certain areas we can go as an industry and partner with the government for the big issues. And I think, you know, I fully support this initiative, so I don't know how you do it. From my side, I can take it up to the Middle East and Africa pharma group, if you can do things. But I want to come back to your market research. I think we should have the patient insight, because if we do things without having, but, you know, market research, we are also facing another problem. I'm really sometimes scared from market research because it might take me to the other direction. For only one reason, because we have tried all different type of market research. Even we were working with multinational, you know, companies who do market research, and it ended up they are outsourcing to another company somewhere, and this company somewhere outsourcing to another company. And then we ended up having, you know, my personal experience is negative. You know, I mean, we got not the right data, and the risk for me is to go in the other direction. The point is, I mean, that's coming back because I want to, maybe this is my last comment. When we talk about uncertainty, I talked about risk and uncertainties. For risk, it's very easy because you can quantify, you can put their action, you can mitigate. You know, I mean, there is certain probability. In uncertainty, you need to develop a well-trained organization and capabilities that are able to move whatever will happen. And give you my personal experience, because what you talked about today, I mean, I took a group of my leaders to a best business school, and we got one guy who is excellent in scenario planning. And we spent like full week working in 2 scenarios, how the region will go. And then at the last day, the guy came and we looked to the actions. We were 2 different groups. And we found 80% of what need to be done in both actions are the same. And then the guy, you paid him a hell of money. And they said, guys, if 80% of what to do in both scenarios, you have to do it. Why you don't do it now? So that's for you, I think, a question. Because today we talk about market access. We talk about key account management. We talk about health economics. Go outside to the market and find a health economic. I mean, if tomorrow it becomes the best, I mean, what we are doing as an industry to prepare for the future. And my last point, that we underestimate what the government and the health authorities are doing. I don't know if you know that in Oman now they are working on 2050 strategy. And I was impressed by some work they did. It happened that I was discussing that we're looking that most of the physicians in Oman now are coming from India. And they have realized that the need or the request for Indian physician is increasing because most of the companies are going to India and they are going all to the industry or to the hospitals, that Oman in 10 years from now, they cannot afford bringing Indian physician to operate or to work in Oman. And they are thinking now how many physicians to be graduated and in which direction. So sometimes we underestimate what is ongoing. I mean, in UAE or in Dubai or in Abu Dhabi, let's say, in Saudi, they bring McKinsey and they bring other companies to prepare their healthcare strategy for the coming 30 years. And as we do, the issue that, we don't see what they are doing and we don't align what the patient and the customer will need in the future. So I think the point today, the biggest risk is to look today on, we take a snapshot, and this is the issue of market research, because market research will give you now a helicopter view of today, but it will never give you an idea how, the patient's insights or behavior will change in the coming 5 years. So I think the issue today, when we talk about pharma future, we have to think what is needed for the future and what we need to be prepared, because in 5 years, as Bob mentioned, if you don't prepare, we have an issue. I mean, in 5 years, it's too late to work. And if you want to start preparing this and the changing, working with the regulatory affair, we need to start working yesterday.
Great. Well, thank you, Waleed, for your comment, and thank you for your presentation. I want to thank the panelists for all their insight and all the great questions from the audience. Hopefully we'll be able to do this again next year, and I think the suggestion of, in the interim, getting together as a local commercial team to discuss ongoing issues is a very, very good one, and I wish you all the luck in doing that.
Thank you very much. Thank
So
you for providing this forum.
Thank you so much, panel. I think it was really, really insightful and engaging. So the recordings of the panel discussion and the sessions post-consent from everybody will be circulated, so we'll make sure that everybody gets a copy of that. And I'm sure once people, though I'm sure a lot of people in your companies will come and ask for it, because I think the whole 3-4 hours we spend here were very insightful. So I think when I started the session today, our objective here from Indegene was to create a platform which can facilitate a discussion forum, a network. I think it's been a great beginning, because I've seen exchange of ideas and exchange of challenges across the world. They are the same, but I think purely from a local nuances, I think some of the things captured by Waleed and the panelists have been amazing. So absolutely great, and I think small beginning from us can be made. That I think Kiran putting the Dubai LinkedIn, maybe on the LinkedIn, putting up the whole team which was here, putting them on the forum, and they can open a discussion board there and something on Facebook. So maybe an online tool can be obviously created where people can come in, and then I leave it to Farooq and Waleed to decide which is the address for the next group discussion. So thank you, and if you can present them a small memento, each of the panelists.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So I know it's a weekend and it's late in the evening, but we are open for, we have the cocktails and the networking sessions. So some of the panelists will be here. So if anybody wants to catch them and ask for some questions, Bob is definitely going to be here. If somebody wants to chat, definitely we are outside on the network and the cocktail session. Thank you so much, and definitely look forward for this session in 2013. We will be back here and hopefully the same venue. Thank you.